Hey there, my name is Chand and I am director of studyeasy.org and I would be your author for this tutorial on basics of JSP and Servlet. We have more than 12 online courses already, which includes more than 33,000 students worldwide. For more information, check out the video description. Moreover, the video tutorial you are about to view is taken from our advanced course on JSP Servlet and JSTL. Link to our advanced course is also provided in the video description, so do check the video description as well. Now proceed further and enjoy the video tutorial. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey friends, welcome. Friends, before we start with JSP and Servlets, we need to set up our local system so that we can run and execute program on our local system directly. We need 3 software, out of which the first software which we need is JDK, and JDK stands for Java Development Kit. And if we Google JDK, the first search result would be Java SE downloads, and let us click on the first search result by Google. The current JDK version which is available at the time of recording is version 8 update 9192. Let us click on the icon Java downloads, and the download page for Java SE would load, and let us accept the license agreement. In order to initiate the download, we need to and we have to accept the license agreement. There are a couple of flavors of JDK available for different and various operating system, out of whichever operating system you are using, choose the proper JDK. In our case, we are making use of Windows 64-bit operating system, so we would click on this link, Windows X64, and as soon as we click on this link, the download will initiate. In order to save some time, I have already downloaded this JDK file, so let us cancel the download. I have also installed this JDK in our system, so once the download is complete, also install the JDK in your computer so that we can start programming. Next thing that we would require is Tomcat. Apache Tomcat is a web server and your code would be executed on this web server. So let us download the Apache Tomcat web server. The current version of Apache Tomcat is Apache Tomcat 9, and Tomcat 9 is the latest version, and my recommendation is to always go with the latest version of the software. In here, in this particular section, there are a couple of binary distributions. For example, in here there are zip distribution, Windows distribution, and this specific 32-bit/64-bit Windows Service Installer. My recommendation is to go with Windows Service Installer, as if we install the Service Installer, we also get a console name as Monitor Tomcat, which I will surely show you guys. If I click on this link, the download will start. So the download is initiated. Let us cancel the download because I have already downloaded and installed Tomcat. And the Monitor Tomcat console which I was talking about, if I search Tomcat on my Windows machine, then in here I will get this desktop app which is Monitor Tomcat, and using this Monitor Tomcat we can start or stop Tomcat service. So I can start the Tomcat service, and if I start the Tomcat service, then the Apache Tomcat is up and running. So let us click on OK to start with. The last software which we need is Eclipse IDE. Why Eclipse IDE? Because Eclipse is widely used in industry, and we will also prefer Eclipse to use as an IDE. So let us click on Eclipse downloads, which is the first search result by Google. In here, the latest version of Eclipse is Eclipse Neon. We can either make use of the installer or we can also make use of packages. So both the ways are correct, and in my case I have downloaded the package of Eclipse. Let us go with the package option. So I will click on download package link, and in here we have this Eclipse IDE for Java EE developers link. Let us click on here, and there we go. So the Neon package is the latest one, and now we are making use of Windows 64-bit operating system. So we will click on this particular link, Windows 64-bit, and let us click on download, and the download will start in a minute, I suppose. Here we go. So download is initiated, and the download would be in the form of zip file. So let me cancel this. All this required software are already downloaded by me in order to save some time. So these are the 3 softwares, and out of which JDK and Tomcat are already installed. And in order to get started with Eclipse, we need to extract Eclipse in a separate folder. So let me extract it in here. There is, I guess, some kind of issue. Let me pause this video for a minute. So I have successfully extracted this zip file which I have downloaded from the internet, and all the files are inside here. And the issue which we were experiencing was due to some naming convention. I have fixed the issue. Now in here we have this Eclipse folder, and what I usually do, I cut this folder and paste it inside C drive, and which I have already did, and files are copied in here. And this particular Eclipse folder has all the required files which Eclipse IDE need, and inside this Eclipse folder we have this eclipse.exe application, and surely in order to access Eclipse easily, you can create a shortcut on the desktop. In fact, I have already created a shortcut on the desktop, and here, and let me close this Windows, and here is the shortcut for Eclipse. And if I double click the Eclipse IDE will launch. Eclipse will take some time as we are starting the Eclipse for the very first time, and let me pause this video for a minute. Here we go. So the Eclipse IDE has launched, and it will give us a welcome page. And in order to proceed further, let us close the welcome page, and this is the perspective of Eclipse IDE. And to start programming with JSP, we need to add a server, and if you check at the lower middle part, in here we have these tabs, out of which one tab is servers. So in here, if I click on server, it will say no servers are available. Now in order to add a server, we have this link, no servers are available. Click this link to create a new server. Let me click on this, and in here the server we intended to add is Apache Tomcat. So we need to traverse this tree, and in here we have this Tomcat version 9.0 server. So let me click on this, click on next, and we need to give Tomcat installation directory to Eclipse. So let me browse and navigate to C drive and navigate to program files, then Apache Software Foundation, and here is Tomcat 9.0, and click on OK. So the location is under program files, Apache Software Foundation / Tomcat 9.0. Let us click on next, and let us click on finish. Here we go. Now friends, Apache Tomcat 9 server at localhost, and it shows that it's stopped and republished. Now we can right click it and start the Tomcat server, and if we do so, I suppose there would be an issue, and these errors are because Apache Tomcat is already running as a service, and the ports 8005, 8080 and 8009 are already in use. So in order to fix this issue, we need to take help of Monitor Tomcat console. So I will again search for Tomcat, and if I open monitor Tomcat, then we need to stop the service and click on OK. Now Tomcat would be handled by Eclipse, and now as the service of Tomcat is being stopped, now we can start the Tomcat from the Eclipse. Now if I start Apache Tomcat, then it will not give us an warning. We need to allow the access. Let us allow access, and here we go. Apache Tomcat is started and synchronized. So this is how we can configure our local system to get started with JSP and Servlet. Definitely we will check how to code with JSP and Servlet in upcoming lecture. I suppose the lecture was easy to understand and you guys have understood what I was trying to convey. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Take care. Hey there, welcome back. Friends, we have our Eclipse which is up and running. The Tomcat server is started and we are all set to code our first Hello World program using JSP. For doing so, let us add one new project, and the project would be dynamic web project. The name could be like Hello World, and everything else looks good. So click on next, then again click on next. This context root means this particular text would be an identifier in the URL for the particular project, and we would definitely talk more on the URL and this context root. As of now, don't worry about this much, but we're gonna check that where this particular text would be used. Let's click finish, and here we go. Now friends, whenever we work with JSP and Servlets, this is the structure of the project. In here, the servlets are classes and hence it is placed under Java resources, whereas the JSP and HTML content is placed under web content. To start with, let us understand how to code a very simple Hello World program by creating a servlet. For doing so, I will select Java resources first, then right click and add new servlet. The project would be obviously Hello World. Package name could be Hello, and class name would be Hello World again. Alright, we will click on next. Everything looks good to me. Again next, here we go. So in here there are a couple of methods which Eclipse can code for us, and as of now we simply need do get method. Now why do get method? Don't worry about this as of now. Let's click finish. Here we go. So in here a template is been generated by Eclipse and we can proceed further and start coding. Now even though Eclipse has coded this particular template for us, but even then there are a couple of issues, and the issue is because couple of classes is not resolved by Eclipse by default. If I hover on this particular errors, the error are the import java x.servlet cannot be resolved, and how we can fix it. Now this particular issue is common, and in order to fix this we simply need to right click on this project and navigate to build path, configure build path, and in here we need to add external jar, and this external jar is provided by Tomcat 9. And which library we need to add? This Servlet API. Open and apply and again OK. Here we go, and the issue is vanished. So all we need to start with programming is in front of us. Let us talk about this doGet method now. Now whenever a URL hit a specific URL, this doGet method gets called, and there are two parameters: HTTP servlet request, here is the object for request, and HTTP servlet response, and response is the object for HTTP servlet response. Now request means when we are requesting particular information, whereas response means that whatever information we are giving in response. So as if now we are not requesting any particular resource using the URL directly, so we will make use of response. As if now, let's get rid of it. In here we would be making use of, for example, system.out.println, sysout, and autocomplete by control space, and let me type in hello world in here. Now if I do so, it will type in this text hello world to the console and not to the web browser. Let me execute this program first. Restart server. Here we go. Hello world is being printed on the console but not on the web browser. Let me also copy this URL and open this URL directly on the web browser. Now as we have called this particular URL again, hello world has been printed on the console twice. Now in order to print the particular text on the web browser, we need to make use of this response object, and the way is pretty simple. We will type in print writer, the object name maybe print equals, in here we need to type in response dot get writer. Here we go. And now by making use of this print object, we would type in the text on the console, so it would be print ln, and obviously we can also type in HTML tags in here, maybe for example h1 and closing h1. Here we go. And inside this tag we will be printing hello world. This looks good. Let's execute this code. Next and finish. Now always choose this restart server option. Why? The reason is that if there is anything which is cached by Tomcat, that particular cached memory would be reset and you will get a perfect result. No inconsistency would be there. So let's click OK, and it will take a minute to restart and execute the code once again. And here we go, hello world. And if we view source, then it would be the exact text which we have printed on the web browser. If I again copy it and paste it on the web browser, obviously, oops, here we go, view page source, obviously the output would be same. So this is all about today's session, and we will again check more and how to work with JSP in forthcoming lectures. I hope I have made myself clear and lecture was understandable and easy to understand. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey fellas, welcome back. Friends, today we're gonna check how to deal with JSP files and HTML files. Moreover, we will also check what is the usage of this web content folder. In order to save some time, I have already added this project by the name of lecture 4, Hello World JSP. Now friends, if we check this folder architecture of this particular project, we have already checked that in order to add a servlet, we have added it in this Java resources folder. Now if we check the architecture of JSP application, all the Java resources are inside this Java resources. What are Java resources? The class files, obviously, basically the servlets. Now whatever is the web content, may it be JSP files or HTML files, these files are kept inside this web content folder. Now we would definitely dig more into the architecture of JSP. As if now do understand that whenever we would like to add a HTML, XML or JSP file, add it in this web content folder. So I will right click on new HTML file. Let us give the name as new file.html. Let us keep it as it is. Next, and let us go with the default encoding scheme. These are the templates of HTML, and you can use any HTML template which is required in your project. We will keep it as the default, and here we go. Now this is a very basic template of HTML, and let us add one very simple text, hello HTML. Now whenever we would try to execute this particular HTML file, this file would be executed directly. Let me execute it. Here we go. So the new file.html got executed directly from the URL. Definitely the URL was fetched by the Eclipse automatically, and this is our file. Now if we would like to add a new JSP file, even that is very simple. We will navigate to new JSP file and new file.jsp, or let's give the name as new JSP file. Next, again there are a couple of templates. Here we go. Now friends, this particular file or the HTML file which we have created earlier, these files are similar. The major difference between these two kind of file is only one. The major difference is that we can add JSP code in this particular file. Apart from that, it's simple plain text file. Now in here, let us now add like hello JSP, and if we try to execute this particular file, again it will get executed directly on the web browser using new JSP file.jsp. Now the file got directly executed. Now friends, how to manage these files or execution or these URLs, how to control or how to call these files from Servlet, we will again check down the line. As if now, don't worry about all these stuff. Simply understand that JSP file is exactly similar to HTML file. The extension is JSP, and we can execute JSP codes. We will also dig some codes in the next lecture because the length of this lecture is going high. We will skip that part, and obviously we will dig more into JSP concept in the next lecture. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey friends, welcome back. Friends, today we're gonna talk on what is Servlet lifecycle, and we will also try to understand working of Servlet web application. In fact, we try to understand that how exactly the process works behind the scene. Now, if we talk about the Servlet lifecycle concept, understanding or knowing about this concept is not important with respect to programming. Even if you don't know how Tomcat process a request, even that is okay. This will not matter in reality. But understanding these things is important with respect to your interviews and your exam. It is really important to understand how exactly behind the scene work happen. Many a time in interviews and in examination, these kind of question may occur, and knowledge of these things, for example Servlet lifecycle, is important. So let us check exactly what happens behind the scene when we run an web application which is built on Servlet. Now friends, let us quickly check this small little diagram without wasting any time, and this diagram will show you what is Servlet lifecycle. Now Servlet lifecycle is being controlled by Servlet container, and inside the Servlet container your web application will run. So your web application will run inside the Servlet container. And which kind of web application are you going to run? Obviously Servlet web application. So here is your Servlet. Now friends, in here we are not talking about JSP. Why? Because whenever you code a JSP file and try to execute your web application and your JSP files are there in your web application, your web server will implicitly convert your JSP file into Servlet, and finally Servlet will get executed on the web server. So anytime and every time if your JSP also getting executed on your web server, then internally a equivalent servlet is implicitly being generated, and your JSP is not getting executed, but the equivalent servlet is getting executed. Little confusing? Yes, it is little confusing. So try to remember it in this way. Whenever there is a JSP file, web server will generate an equivalent servlet for it. And whenever a request to a JSP file would be made, the equivalent servlet will get executed. So this is it. Now proceeding further, a servlet gets executed in 5 steps. The first 3 steps are loading the servlet class, then creating the instance of servlet, and finally calling the init method. Now this init method is the initialization method. Now friends, these 3 steps are taken only once throughout the life cycle of Servlet. So whenever we start a Tomcat, for example, and execute a web application, so these 3 steps will be taken only once, no matter how many pages the web application has and how many requests we make to the web application. Now once all these 3 steps are being taken and we have made a call to initialization method or init method, in other words, your web application is all set and your web application is up and running. Now a user can make an request and your web application will serve it. Now once we make an HTTP request, a method by the name of service get called by the web server. So whenever there is a request, or in other words an HTTP request made to the web server, this service method is being called, and this service method would be called every time whenever a request is made. Means in the life cycle mostly the service method is being called. Now if we summarize what is the catch, the first 3 steps are taken only once in the life cycle, whereas the service method is called whenever we make a HTTP request to the web application. Finally, when we unload the servlet from the web application, then a call to a destroy method is made. Again, call to a destroy method means we are removing or we are unloading the web application from the servlet container, and in fact it is the end of the web application, and maybe we will restart or reload the web application later. As soon as the destroy method is called, the web application will die, and again the destroy method would be called only once during the life cycle of the servlet. So whenever we will call the destroy method, your web application will die. Now if we summarize, the first 3 steps are taken only once, the last step is also taken only once, and for every HTTP request the service method is called during the servlet lifecycle. So this is all about servlet lifecycle, nothing else, and this is only important because of your interviews and because of your examination, and this is really a good to know information, and this is all about it. I guess the explanation was easy to understand and you guys understood it. See you next time. Till then, keep coding. Have a nice day. Hey friends, welcome. Friends, today we're gonna check JSP expressions. What are these? And first of all, let us check about what are these scripting elements. JSP scripting elements. Now in JSP there are a couple of JSP scripting elements, and to be very specific, in total there are 5 scripting elements, and the usage and working of each and every scripting element is different. And in this particular lecture we're gonna check the working of JSP expression scripting element. Before we start with JSP expression, let us quickly check and understand all these 5 scripting element as an overview. We definitely will check all these 5 scripting elements in detail in forthcoming lectures. So the first is the expressions scripting element, and the syntax is we make use of JSP tag followed by a equals to, and we close the JSP tag, and in between these tags we have the expression. The expression is a one-liner statement without semicolon, and this expression could be any single liner complete JSP code. So we will check on this. Next thing is JSP scriptlet, and inside the JSP scriptlet you can write a complete fragment of code, Java code or JSP code, and here is a fragment of code where we display hello world on the web browser as an example. Moving forward, then it comes to declarations. Inside the declaration we make declaration of variables and declaration of methods. We will check why declaration is important in the forthcoming lecture. Declaration inside the scriptlet is also possible, but there are plenty of situations where declaration inside the scriptlet will not work. So we will gonna check on that. Finally, then it comes to directives. Directives is a bigger chapter, and directives has various type of directives and various options in each of the directives, so we need to check on that. And finally it comes to comments. As we know, comments plays an important role in describing things, and as we know, it is always a good practice to comment things as the other programmers, and in fact the programmer itself will understand what was the purpose of the code. So I guess the overview of the JSP scripting is done and the explanation was easy to understand. Let's move forward. Let us dig more into JSP scripting element expressions. In order to save some time, I have already added this project in our Eclipse IDE. Let us quickly create a JSP file. For doing so, I will right click, navigate to new JSP file, and I will give the name as expressions, and in here I can click on next, and if I click on next we can surely select the templates, and let us keep it as default, and let us click on finish. Here we go. So here is a sample template, and in the title let us make it as expressions, and inside the body let us add an expression. So this particular expression would be the simplest one, and I will type in println hello world. And inside an expression we never use an semicolon, and if we use a semicolon there would be an error. Now friends, expression will always work on a single statement, and this is the reason why we doesn't require a statement terminator, because it would be only a single statement. Now we can also do one thing. For example, in here we make use of declaration scripting element, and for example I make use of public int entity, maybe x equals 5, and in here we would be printing 5 by calling the variable x, so the output would be 5. In here we are simply typing in x, which is the name of the variable. So I will execute the program and the output should be 5, which is perfect. So whenever we make use of expression and deal with string, we can also do this: new string and create an object of a string type, and in here maybe I type in my name and save. Eclipse is giving some kind of error. I don't know why. The statement is correct and the output is in front of us. So this is how we can handle a string under expression, and if we make use of println it will not work, and the shortcut technique is very simple. We simply pass the string and execute the program. The output would be in front of us. So this is how we deal with expression. Now not only expression is capable of printing a string, rather we can do one more thing. For example, in here I will type in new java.util.date. So I am directly calling the date method, and by doing this it will print the date on the web browser. So this would be the output. In fact, let us keep this as it is as an example, and let us again add one extra line of expression. In this particular panel, output panel, we can also check that it is JSP expression. So this is again a pointer. We can double click it and it will highlight the equivalent expression. So let us work with this expression. In here we can also do couple of more things. For example, we can do any operation, any logical operation or any arithmetic operation. For example, if I do this operation, 25 multiplied by maybe 10, and save the program and execute the program, it will display the date and 250. And inside here, let us add some BR tags to make things cleaner. And we are making use of self-contained BR tags. Here we go. And now the 250 would be in a next to next line. Here we go. So this is also possible. Let's proceed further. Let me copy this line and paste it in here, and let us add one more expression to it. And in here we will say is 25 greater than 50, and there would be a question mark, right? And as this is a text, we will keep it outside the expression, and inside the expression we would do a simple operation, and it would be 25 greater than 50. Now this particular operation is a boolean operation, and it will return true or false depending on the condition. The current condition is false, and now if I execute the program, it will show is 25 greater than 50, false, right? So operations are also possible. For example, in here we did an boolean operation, so this is again possible. Finally, let us do one more small little thing which will make the things more cleaner and clear in your mind. So finally, inside this expression, let us do some condition checking. For example, if 25 is greater than 50, and under braces we will add some, let me format it properly. Here we go. And inside this braces we can type in any expression, for example hi, else, or in fact it would be like true as a text, and in here we will type in false. Now inside an if block we cannot make use of direct string, but inside an expression, if we would like to display a string, we can directly type in the string. So this is a little confusing. The bottom line or the answer is these kind of expressions cannot be used inside an expression. We can only make use of statement which are complete statement and a single liner statement. For example, calling this method, or displaying a text on the console, or making a small calculation, or making a boolean operation. So these kind of operation are possible, but if we are making use of some condition like this, let me complete this statement as well. Print ln, and inside the parameter of print ln we will make use of this, and let me copy this and paste it in here, and in here I will type in false. If a statement is a perfectly complete statement and it's inside a expression, so this should not work and there would be an issue. Here we go. But as soon as I make it scriptlet we will check in a minute, and that too in a depth, then it should work. Here we go. I don't know why Eclipse is giving me these errors even though the code is correct. There could be some kind of issue. In fact, there is some issue. The Eclipse is not integrating with Tomcat 9 as well. It was integrated with Tomcat 9, but somehow now it is not integrating. Some weird issues with Eclipse right now. So coming back to the topic, let me get rid of these line of code. Whenever we deal with expression, whatever is the output of the expression would be displayed directly on the web browser. So this is the bottom line. Inside an expression, only a single liner statement could be there. The output of the statement would be displayed inside the web browser, and expression doesn't need a semicolon. as there is only a single statement. So this is all about JSP expression. I hope I have made myself clear. Thank you for watching and keep coding. Hey friends, today we're gonna check on JSP scripting element scriptlet, and as usual for saving time I have already added the project, and now let us add a JSP file quickly. So I will click on new by highlighting web content folder, JSP file, and give the name as scriptlet, and I can either click on finish. By default a JSP file with a default template would be generated, or we can click on next and select the appropriate template. We will go with the default template and click on finish, and here we go, and we need to quickly add the build path. We need to add the Servlet API, click on apply, and okay, here we go. So now in this particular JSP file we can add JSP scriptlet. Now JSP scriptlet is very widely used by me usually, and most of the developers also are very comfortable with JSP scriptlet, for the simple reason that in here we need not to worry about anything. This is an independent fragment of code, and we can type in any Java code, and Java code could be easily used inside the scriptlet. For example, if I do this out.println, and inside println I will print hello world. So this is an independent statement, and obviously in order to make this a complete statement we need to use semicolon, and if I execute this program the output would be hello world on the web browser page. So let me click on finish. The code will get executed on Tomcat, and an instance of web browser will be opened by Eclipse in a minute. It is taking some time. Here we go. So the output is hello world, which is expected, and if we view source, so here is the source code, and the source code is as expected. Let me close this source code. Let me also close the output in fact, and coming back to the scriptlet.jsp. Inside an scriptlet we can not only add a single statement, rather a complete fragment of code can be coded inside a scriptlet. Now let us declare and define a variable, maybe int, and the name of the variable could be like age equals 12 maybe, and now we can output it as my age is colon, and we will print the age. Well, I am not 12 years old, rather it's simply an example, and if I execute the program the output is my age is 12, which is perfect. So not only a single statement, rather we can execute multiple statement inside a scriptlet. Now we can do again one more thing. I will add one more scriptlet in here, and I will type in out.println, and for sake of simplicity we will simply print age in here, and let me execute the program. Here we go. So this particular age would be accessible throughout the page, and this particular age variable, which has a default scope, would be available to other scriptlets as well. Let me get rid of it. Finally, let us add a conditional statement, and we will also try to add a loop inside a scriptlet. So let us quickly do that. I will type in if, maybe for sake of simplicity let us make it very simple. If 15 is greater than 10, then we will print. Here we go. So it's a very simple condition in here, and if I execute the program the output would be my age is 12 and 15 is greater than 10. I can also use a single line comment in here. So in here we can rather make use of single line comment, and we can also make use of double line comment, and these comments are nothing but Java comments. So inside a scriptlet we can make use of Java comments, and obviously we will talk more about comments in the forthcoming lectures. Now let's quickly check a looping statement in here. So I will type for int I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus, and inside loop we will say out.println we love JSP, and we will also display I. Let's output the statement. Now let's check the output. Here we go. And now let's do something more changes in here. We will add a BR tag. So it is perfectly alright to add a HTML code or HTML tags inside println, and this will work perfectly. We can also add BR tag in here, and now let's execute the program and the output would be much better. Here we go. So 15 is greater than 10, we love JSP, 0 we love JSP1, and the output is perfect. So this is how we can make use of a scriptlet. There is absolutely no restriction how many line of code we can make use inside a scriptlet. A scriptlet is independent, self-sufficient block of code. Now again, there is a twist in JSP scriptlet which we will discuss under our lecture JSP scripting, where we will check how we can code partial statements or partial fragment of code inside scriptlet and complete the remaining code in some other scriptlet. So that would be checked in forthcoming lectures. I hope I have made myself clear and I was easy to understand. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey guys, welcome back. Friends, today we're gonna check and discuss on JSP declaration scripting element, and for doing so we have added this project, and let us quickly add one JSP file in this particular project. The name would be declaration.jsp, and inside this particular JSP file let us start with an scriptlet first. Inside a scriptlet we can indeed declare a variable, for example int maybe test, and the scope of this test variable would be default. Means we are capable of declaring a variable inside a scriptlet as well. For example, if I declare the test variable with 10 and using altogether a different scriptlet, I display the value. Or for example, let us use an expression in here, and using an expression let us display the value of this variable test. Even this will work. Here we go. Now the reason why we require a declaration tag is mainly because of method declaration, and majority of the time the scope of a variable with a scope default works fine for any developer. But when we would like to declare a variable like private, then we won't be able to define a private variable inside a scriptlet. Likewise, even a public variable cannot be defined under a scriptlet, for the simple reason that inside a scriptlet these modifiers are not allowed. Alright, so moving forward, let's get rid of this temporary code. Now let's add one declaration scripting element, and the syntax is pretty simple. We make use of JSP tag followed by exclamation mark. So this is the tag for JSP declaration scripting element. Now inside this particular scripting element we can definitely declare private or public variables with an ease, and there won't be any issue. For example, in here again we create a test variable and initialize this with 10. There won't be any issue, and definitely we can print it using an expression. There we go. And now if I execute the program, the output would be as expected, 10. Now always remember this, majorly and 90% of the time declaration tag would be used in order to declare and define methods. So let's get rid of this, let's get rid of this as well, and in here let us declare and define one method. So in here, for sake of simplicity, we will create a very simple method, and this method will simply print message on the web browser. So the return type would be string, the name of the method would be maybe message, and inside the body of the message we will simply return a message. The message would be hello world. I guess everything looks fine, and finally let us make a call using our expression, and in here we will call message method, no semicolon and expression, and finally let us execute the program and the output should be hello world. Here we go. So this is where declaration is most used, and I guess the explanation was easy to understand. Whenever we require to declare and define a method in a JSP page, declaration scripting element is required. I suppose you guys have understood the concept. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey friends, welcome. Friends, today we're gonna check comments under JSP, and in fact we were not planning for this particular lecture, but a question from one of the students named Mirko, in fact the first student in this particular course on Udemy, led us to create an lecture on JSP comments, and this is really important, and let us also check why we require this lecture, and by the end of the lecture you guys would be convinced that this particular lecture is indeed important. In order to save some time, I have already added this particular project into our Eclipse IDE by the name of JSP comments, and now let us quickly add one JSP file in here, new JSP, and the name would be comments.jsp, and we will click on finish, and a JSP file with a template would be generated for us by Eclipse. And in this title we can add, for example, comments. Now friends, this particular course is not about HTML, so we won't be covering much of the HTML, and we will stick to JSP and Servlet, and you guys must have some prior knowledge of HTML to understand this course better. And if you guys doesn't have a prior knowledge of HTML, then we would definitely suggest you guys to take a course on HTML first, as it is required, and there are plenty of available courses out there, that too free of cost, and you guys can definitely check out those. So let us continue our quest of understanding JSP comments, and in order to do so, let us firstly type in something in the body of the JSP page, and we would display a simple date on the web page, and for doing so let us make it strong to start with, strong, and we will close strong, which is done by Eclipse for us, and inside this strong we would make use of JSP expression. So we will type in the JSP expression tag, JSP expression tag, and inside this JSP expression tag we will create a new object of date type. So we will type in new java.util.date, and that's it. And now if I execute this particular program, then on the web page it will display us the date, that too in a strong font. Now friends, somehow, for example, if we would like to comment this particular line, then definitely we can, for example, do this. We will HTML comment this particular expression, and we will close it like this. Now if I execute this particular page, then there would be nothing on the web page, and which is expected. Now we will do the same thing, and this time maybe something else we would be doing, and for example this time let's use JSP scriptlet, and inside this JSP scriptlet we will redirect the page to a new page. Now how to redirect or how to forward the page, there is altogether a different lecture for it. As if now only try to understand that how we are forwarding a request and what would be the effect of HTML comment on this particular statement which we are going to do, and it would be response.send redirect, and inside the send redirect we would type in a text, and that text would be definitely a string. Here we go, and it would be HTTP. Let's execute the program. Here we go. So this will load the Google home page. And why it is loading the Google home page? Because we are redirecting the request to google.com. Now let me do one more thing. Let me make all things in single line, which will look better when we comment it out. So now I will again HTML comment this particular scriptlet, and now we will check the effect. Here we go. And now if I execute the program, then it should not redirect to google.com, which is expected. But somehow we are redirecting to google.com once again, which is strange, I guess, right? Now in fact, if I also refresh the Tomcat server by restarting it, in fact by stopping it, in order to get rid of any caching stuff, and we would be damn sure that the correct code is getting executed, and even then it should and it will redirect to google.com. Yes. Now what is the reason behind it? The reason is pretty simple, because we are making use of HTML comment, and HTML comment will not prevent this code to get executed. Now once this code will get executed, this will definitely redirect this page to google.com. But when we were talking about this particular line, this worked, and this time when it comes to this particular line, this doesn't work. Why so? Let us understand that. As if now, let me comment it in this way. This comment will definitely work. This is a Java comment which works only under scriptlet. We will talk about how to comment under JSP in a minute. And let me stop the server to get rid of any caching thing. Here we go. And now if I again execute the program, this time this particular line will get executed, right? Which is inside a HTML comment. It is taking some time, and it will load a page which is blank. But if we view source, the view source will show us that in fact the Java code also got executed. The only reason why this is not on this web page is because of this HTML comment. So whenever we make use of HTML comment, the JSP code will get executed, but it will not display on the page. Now in this particular case, the second case, we need not to display anything on the web page. Now this particular line of code is a non-printable statement, and this will definitely redirect your page to URL, which is google.com in this case. Now what is the solution? Always use proper commenting scheme. And how to comment under JSP? Let us understand that. In order to comment in JSP, let us get rid of these HTML comments first. So the proper way of HTML comment is only one. The comment is, we make use of dash dash, and we will complete the comment as again dash dash and the tag of JSP. Likewise in expression we can also do this. Here we go. So this is how we can comment the specific JSP code. Now there is one more thing which we would like to discuss. When it comes to scriptlet, for example, let us uncomment this. Even the Java comment will work, but this is only in the case of scriptlet. We can also use this particular comment or the multi-line comment like this. Let me demonstrate to you with proper formatting. In fact, there is no need of this multi-line comment. This is only because of the demonstration purpose. So even the multi-line comment and the single line comment of Java would also work, but only under scriptlet and not under JSP declaration and JSP expression. So this is how we comment, and even the Eclipse is showing us this particular comment in here. So this is how we exactly do comment, and this is really important because JSP code will get executed even if you HTML comment the code, and sometime it may cause issue. So I guess I have made myself clear and the explanation was easy to understand. The bottom line is use proper JSP comment, and this is how we comment under JSP. Now we can't do this. For example, this will not work. The only comment is JSP tag 2 hyphens, then again 2 hyphens, then JSP tag. So this is all about JSP comment. I hope you guys have enjoyed the lecture. Keep coding, have a nice day and take care. Hey there, welcome. Friends, today we're gonna check the JSP scripting, or in other words, how to make use of normal Java code in our JSP page and mixing the HTML with Java code. Let's quickly add a new project, and the name of the project would be JSP scripting, and we will keep everything as default and we will click on finish. And obviously we will also add the Servlet API jar to our project in order to get rid of the unwanted issues. And now let's add one new JSP page in here, scripting.jsp. We'll click on finish, and here is a sample page. Now in this particular page we can easily add Java code, and the way to do it is JSP scriptlet. I will simply make use of JSP scriptlet tag, and in between these scriptlet tag we can add our code. For example, let us add a for loop in here. So I will type in for variable int I equals 0, I is less than 10 and I plus plus. And inside the body of for loop we can print maybe the value of I, and even that could be done by making use of out object, which is readily available to JSP. So I will type in out.println, and for using this out.println we need not to import anything. We can simply make use of this method directly. Now if I execute the program, the output would be very simple, from 0 to 9 on our web page. Here we go. So this is the perfect output. And for example, if we want to make use of the BR tag, there is two ways to it. For example, we can make use of again println, and in here in between double quotes we can make use of BR tag. Now friends, this particular lecture is based on JSP and Servlet, and we won't be able to cover HTML in it. If you guys have prior knowledge of HTML, that would definitely help, and if you don't, we would recommend you guys to check the HTML basic tutorial first before going ahead with this course. This particular BR tag means it is a self-contained tag, and this doesn't require a closing brace because we have the closing and opening tag enclosed within. So this is part of HTML in fact, and if I execute the program now, every value of I would be in a line. Apart from this, we need not to worry about any typecasting. Even though we are printing I as a string, it would be taken care by the JSP itself. Now for example, we need to add some HTML in between, and we don't want this particular notation in here. Even that is possible. For doing so, we can do it like this. We will close the scriptlet in here, and we will open the scriptlet again like this. Let me make some changes in order to make things cleaner to you guys. So let me format this little bit, and now friends, this particular closing brace of for loop is under a separate scriptlet, and which is perfectly fine. Now in between these two parameters or these two tags, we can make use of any HTML. For example, in here we can type in hello. There won't be any issue, or there won't be any compile time error. If now I execute the program, there would be hello couple of times, right? Now why we are printing 0, 1, 2, 3? We are printing because of this particular line. Now we can, in fact, in here we can add any tag. For example, a strong, s needs to be in lowercase, and we will close strong. And again, if we execute the program, it would be 0 hello 1 hello like this. Let me close all these versions, And obviously we can make use of br tag in here to make things more cleaner in fact. And in here we can concatenate a text. For example, text would be colon. Here we go. So this looks better now. So the point I'm trying to make is that mixing of these kind of scriptlet is perfectly fine. In fact, we can add any code in here. For example, making a decision if, by making use of if statement. Again, that is possible. So in here, let us keep things as it is and let's use a new scriptlet. Here we go. And in here, for example, add a condition, or in fact in here we can add a condition, and the condition would be if the value of I is maybe 5, then we would print hello world. So this would be easy. In here we would add one new scriptlet and the condition would be if I is not equal to 5, then we would be printing hello. It would be closing braces of if. Let me arrange the text in a proper way, which would definitely make things more readable. So if the I is not equal to 5, then we would be printing hello, else we would be printing hello world. And this time we would be making use of a simple trick, and that trick would be out.println. And inside println, for example, we can copy this from here and paste it in here, and this would be in between double quotes obviously. Here we go. And in here we would be typing in hello world. So this is the case. Whenever the value of I would be 5, we would be printing hello world. So everything and anything could be possible, and we can make use of these kind of script in JSP easily. And this particular convention is terrible to understand because it is very confusing that where and the code got started and where it is ended. But many a times in JSP, for small calculation only, we may require JSP scripts, and this is the way how we can do. Usually Java application, we doesn't depend on these kind of scriptlet. There is rather a specific way to handle things, and majorly frameworks are used in order to develop web application. But this is the way which we must know that how to mix things with JSP, because many a time it becomes very handy to use these things for very small calculation. And this is all about today's lecture and how we can make use of tag inside the println tag and keep things simple, or we can mix the HTML in a raw format, even that is possible. And we can make use of any keywords in Java, may it be for loop or making condition with if. And I hope I have made myself clear and the things are easy to understand. The source code of all the programs would be available to you guys. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey there, welcome back. Friends, today we're gonna start with a new lecture, and today we're gonna talk on deployment, descriptor and annotation. And to start with, let us add a new project, new dynamic web project, and we will give the project name as lecture 6 deployment descriptor annotation temp 1. And in here we will select the dynamic web module version 3.0, which is the default for this particular project. And let us click on next. In here we have this particular checkbox, generate web.xml deployment descriptor. If you are using a previous version of Eclipse, you may not get this particular option, and the Eclipse IDE will by default create a web.xml deployment descriptor. To start with, let us click on this option, generate web.xml deployment descriptor. Let's click on finish, and here we go. So the project is being created, and inside this project let us create one new servlet first. I will right click by highlighting Java resources, new servlet, and the package name would be like demo, and the class name would be maybe test. Click next, and everything seems perfect. Let's click on finish. Here we go. And now, alright, there are a couple of issues in here, and the issue is because we haven't built our build path properly. So let us configure it quickly. I will add an external jar, and the jar is Servlet API. We need to configure our build path if we are getting this error, and if you are not facing or not experiencing this kind of error to start with, then don't worry about this build path anymore. And now if I execute the program by highlighting the test.java file, then okay, let us also checkbox this. Alright, and here we go. So the output is because of this particular line, which is being generated by Eclipse IDE to make our things easy. So in here we are able to see that our servlet is getting executed perfectly. Now how this servlet is getting to know to execute this particular servlet for this particular URL, and the answer is annotation. If I navigate to this particular file, which is inside demo package, then in here we have this annotation of a web servlet. For example, if I change this test to test, maybe test2, and save the program and navigate here and refresh the web page, I need to execute the program once again by restarting the server. Remember my decision and click OK. Then you would be noticing that the URL will change to test2. Here we go. So the URL is test2, and if I remove 2 from the URL and hit enter, there would be a 404 not found error, and the key is this particular annotation. So how JSP or how the server, Tomcat server, get to know the exact URL for this particular servlet? The answer is this particular annotation. Now as if now we are making use of web module version 3.0, which we have selected when we have added this new project, and the version of Tomcat is 9.0, which is latest at the time of recording. Now this annotation is being used in these latest version of Tomcat. Prior to web module 3.0, we used to use deployment descriptor for all these maintaining of links and all other stuff. So all the link and URL patterns would be handled by deployment descriptor and not the annotation. So let us check the deployment descriptor. Now in this particular project we can see that the first link is deployment descriptor. Let me show you this more clearly. Deployment descriptor lecture 6, deployment descriptor and annotation temp1, which is the name of the project. Now if I open this particular deployment descriptor with textpad, then web.xml would be opened in front of us. In fact, this deployment descriptor is nothing but this particular file which is inside web.xml. Even I can show you this. So both the file are same. Let me close this and reopen this file. Things would be more cleaner. Alright. So this is the deployment descriptor for our project, and there is nothing special inside this. In fact, the only interesting thing which looks good in here, this is welcome file. So let us first talk about the welcome file, and then we would again talk about a module version prior to 3.0. Now what is this welcome file? Now welcome file means the default file which will be called when we will call the base URL. For example, if I hit enter by simply typing in the project name, then the base URL is got called and it will again status 404, because Tomcat doesn't know that which file to load, right? Now this base URL is what? For example, google.com is the base URL, and after google.com any URL or any parameter is the other part of the URL. Let me show you this. So if we check this particular URL, in here this particular part google.co.in is the base URL. So whenever we hit this base URL, a web page is being loaded by default, and that particular web page is this particular page. Now how the Tomcat server will know that which file to load? And the answer is web.xml, the deployment descriptor. So let me open the deployment descriptor. Now inside this deployment descriptor there are a couple of files which are listed, and among all these files no file is present in our project. For example, if I create a new HTML file by the name of index.html and click on finish, and inside this index.html I will simply type in welcome. So this page will become the welcome page, as the name of this particular file is being listed as a welcome file under deployment descriptor. Now if I go ahead and hit the refresh button, then it should load the welcome page, and obviously the welcome page got loaded. So this is how the deployment descriptor work. Now I will simply create a new project with the web module version 2.5 to show you how the deployment descriptor used to work before the module version 3.0. Now friends, this is important because many a time it so happens that when we deploy the web application in the server, the Tomcat version is not latest, and because of this inconsistency your web application will not work, and in that particular time you need to work on your deployment descriptor or on your annotation to get things started. So let us close this particular project and let us add a new project by right clicking on the project explorer space, dynamic web project, and the project name would be temp2, deployment descriptor and annotation temp2, and the dynamic web module version would be 2.5, means we are making use of older version of web module version. And let's click on next. Generate web.xml deployment descriptor is by default checked because we are making use of web module version 2.5. And now finally we will click on finish. Let us also close this particular web page. So this is the project which we have created with module version 2.5, and let us now create one new servlet file, and the name could be like package, and it would be like test, class name test. All right, here we go. And now again we need to add like servlet -API jar file, and let us quickly configure the build path. Add external jars, servlet API, open, apply, and OK. So everything looks good. Now let me highlight this and click on run. Always use the server when running this project. Click on finish, and the output is pretty expected. Servlet and the description, the link of the project. So this is all about module version 2.5, how to execute it and how to add the project. But when we check this particular test.java file properly, we can see that the annotation is not here. Instead, the deployment descriptor is taking care of all these linking part. So if I open the web.xml now, open with text editor, now this particular part is new, and in here we can able to see that how things are. In here we can configure the display name, servlet name, the class which is under package.test. Package is the name of the package in here, and test is the name of the class test. And finally in here servlet mapping, The name of the servlet is test and URL pattern test. So this URL pattern is important. For example, if I make this as test2, then the URL pattern will change, and now if I execute the program, the URL would be not test but test2. Here we go. So this is how prior to module 3.0 the JSP or the Tomcat used to handle the URL mapping. Now finally, let us quickly check how to map a JSP. For doing so, let me add a JSP file in here, and the name could be jsp.jsp, jsp.jsp, which is little confusing. In fact, let me make it demo.jsp, and in here we will type in hello JSP. Let me save this file and execute the file. Here we go. Now friends, by default, if we now open the web.xml, there won't be any URL pattern or URL mapping in here or servlet mapping in here. Why? Because usually people call the JSP files from the servlet, and usually mapping is not required. But if we would like to map a JSP file, which is rather easy, and the way to do so is pretty simple. Let me copy this part and hit couple of enter and paste it in here. Alright, and in here I will make some changes. In here the name could be demo, display name, servlet name would be also demo. The class, servlet class, it won't be servlet class, rather it would be JSP file. So I will type in JSP file, and the JSP file is nothing but demo.jsp. Demo.jsp. We need to give the path. For that reason we need to use this slash, and in here we need to close JSP file. So it would be JSP hyphen file. Alright, and in here for mapping, name is demo, and URL pattern, let us keep it demo again. Now let me save the deployment descriptor and execute this file, and the output is demo.jsp. and if I get rid of this JSP, even then there is an issue. Let me check it. Alright, so in here we have made a typo, it's demo.jsp, and now let me execute the program. Here we go. So the URL changed to simply demo. This is how we can map a JSP file. Usually we don't, but if we want to map, this is the way how we can do it in deployment descriptor. So the important thing about this lecture is that whenever you are facing some kind of inconsistency issue, your web application was working in your local server, but when you have deployed it on the internet, the application is not working anymore. There could be inconsistency issue, and maybe the Tomcat version is not proper or the web module version is not proper. So in that particular matter of fact, do check deployment descriptor and annotation. So this is all about this lecture. I hope I have made myself clear. The lecture was easy and understandable. I hope I will check you guys on the next lecture. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey there, today we're gonna talk on URL parameters, or in other words get parameters. How to read these parameters through Servlet and JSP. Today we're gonna check that. Now what is a parameter first of all? Now if I Google any keyword, for example world in this case, in here we can easily see that this particular text is the base URL. And after that there is a parameter, for example search, then question mark equal to world. Now this text after question mark q equal to world is a parameter. After this ampersand there is a text RLC equals some weird text. So this is yet another parameter. So how to read these parameters in our web application is the agenda today. In order to save some time, I have already added this project into our Eclipse IDE, reading URL parameters, and in here let us add one servlet, and the name of the servlet could be like parameter. So the package name would be like demo, class name would be parameter, and we will click on finish. So the name of the servlet is parameter, and inside the servlet we have this doGet method, and let us get rid of these two lines from here. And in this doGet method we have nothing, and we can, for example, print some text on the web page by adding some text in here. Now unlike JSP, we won't be able to type in out.println directly and provide some text as a parameter of this method. We won't be able to do that. Alright, and if I do like testing in here and try to execute this servlet, there would be an error. So in JSP we can make use of this syntax directly because out object is available there readily, but in case of servlet we need to create the object explicitly, so there would be an exception. So let me like quickly add one extra line of code, and that would be print writer out equals response dot get writer. Here we go. Now this code would work. If we try to add a parameter, maybe for example ID, or maybe the name could be get and equals maybe 10, there won't be any effect on this output of the web page. But if we would like to read this parameter get, then how we can do it? Now this get parameters are part of a request object. So let us quickly check how we can read this parameter. In here we will type in string, maybe the value could be arg1, and this particular variable we will initialize this with the parameter get. So it would be like arg01 equals request dot get parameter, and in this particular parameter of get parameter method we need to pass the name of the parameter as a string, and which is get. And finally we can print the value on the web page using the println method. Now if I execute the program, the output would be testing 10, which is expected. Here we go, testing null because we haven't added the parameter in here. So I will type in get equals 10 and hit enter. So it would be testing 10. So let me also add this as a part of the code. Here we go. And how we can do the same in JSP, which is rather easy in fact. So let's add a new JSP file, and the name could be like parameter.jsp. Here we go. And how we can do it, which is similar to this case, we simply need to do everything identical. The only difference is that in JSP we need not to declare a out object which is readily available. So in here if I copy and paste the code in between JSP scriptlet, obviously, so in here we need to type in this, and we need to close the scriptlet after the code, obviously. Here we go, and let's format it a little bit. Finally let us execute this JSP file. The output would be definitely only null to start with. Here we go. But if I add a new parameter, maybe like get equals 10, then the result will change. Now this is the way how we can read the parameter and obviously we can read multiple parameter, which is again easy. The way is very simple. Let me copy this particular part and paste it in here. In here I will also do yet another thing. I will skip this particular part and directly initialize with like this, and it would be like get2, and obviously its argument 02, and in here we would also make a change argument 02. We are simply trying to read a yet another argument get2, so we are simultaneously reading get and get2. Now if I execute the program, obviously there would be two nulls now. Here we go, and here we can type in get2 equals 12 and get equals 10. So there is no requirement to maintain the series, and we can type in get2 first and then get, or get first and then get2. So there is absolutely no restriction in the sequence, and let me hit enter, and here we go. So it's testing 10 and 12. So this is how we can read multiple parameters simultaneously. We can do the same in this JSP file again, and the output would be again same. Let me execute the program. There would be obviously two nulls in here, and in here I can type in get equals 10 and get 2 equals, in fact not only number, any text, maybe getting 2, even that would work. Here we go. So in here there is some kind of issue, because in place of ampersand I have by mistake used a $sign. So now let me hit enter. Here we go. So 10 and getting 2, which is perfect. So this is how we can read from the get parameters, which is rather very easy, and I hope I have made myself clear. The source code of this particular program would be definitely available to you guys. I hope I have made myself clear. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Friends, today we're gonna check that how to include files in a JSP page. Now friends, there is a reason why we have took this lecture right away. The reason is that including a file in a JSP page is a very common operation, and it is very important to understand that how to include a file in a JSP page and when to use which method to include the file in the JSP page. Now in JSP there are two ways using which we can include a file in a JSP page. To start with, let us add a JSP file in here. The name could be like including one.jsp, and let's click on finish. Here we go, and definitely we would require two files in order to include them in this particular JSP file. So let us create a file. The name of the file would be one.txt. The text could be like this as one. Again we would add a new file in here. Oops, we need to add it in here in order to get the path easily. So in here we would add the file 2.txt, and obviously the text would be this as 2. Looks perfect. Now let us include these files in this JSP page. Firstly, we will go with the include directive, and the way to include this file in this particular JSP page is pretty easy. Opening tag, percentage, then ampersand symbolizes directive, then we need to type in include file and the name of the file, which is one.txt. Now friends, I have kept these files along with the JSP file in order to make things simpler, and we need not to worry about the path or the complete path of the file. So let us now execute this program and check whether this works or not. The system is taking some time. In fact, Eclipse is not responding as of now, and Okay, let me save. Always use the server when running this project. Let's click on next, click on finish, and rather it is taking a longer time today. Here we go. So the text is on the console and we are up and running. The second way to do the same is like this. We can make use of JSP include, and the page would be obviously 2.text. Let me save the program and let us again execute the program. Here we go. So this is 1, this is 2. So the content from the both text is being seen on the web page. Let me add a BR tag in order to make things more cleaner in. Here we go. So both the statement works perfectly. There is no issue with it. But why there are two different methodology to add a file into a JSP page? Now let's understand that. Now the reason why there are two ways to include the file is simple. The first method is being used for static content. Let me add a comment in here. Used to add static content. Now what is static content? The content which we know that will not change. And whenever you know that the content may change, then use the second way, JSP include way. So whenever the content is of dynamic nature, then use the second way. So let me comment it as used for dynamic content. Here we go. Now let us understand more about these two type of including files. And now before discussing about these two type of includes, I need to also tell you guys that not only text, we can include any file, rather may it be HTML file, may it be JSP file. So there is no restriction as such. So now let's talk about this static type of include, or in other words include directive. Now in this particular way, this is more like copying the content of the file directly on the web page. And whenever we execute the program, before the interpretation or before the compilation of the JSP page, the content gets pasted on this particular page by the Tomcat server. So the content of this text would be treated as a part of the original JSP. For example, the content of this 1.txt would be treated by Tomcat server as a part of including 1.jsp file, which is this particular file which is opened in front of us. Whereas if we talk about this JSP include, this particular file would be loaded at the runtime. Means if we refresh the page, the JSP call would be made to this file and the current content of the file would be loaded. This is the reason why when we talk about static content, this particular way is preferred, whereas when we know that the file is of dynamic nature, this particular format of including a file is preferred. And do keep a note of this. This is important because many a time this may create issues in your program. Using a proper include statement is rather important for the simple reason because many a time these statements may cause issues. For example, if you include this include directive in order to add a dynamic content, many a time the latest version of the dynamic content may not be loaded into your page and there would be an issue. So it is important to take a note of it, and this is really important. I hope I have made myself clear. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey friends, welcome back. Friends, today we're gonna talk on import, and in order to save some time, I have already added this project into our Eclipse IDE. The project is blank. I have not added anything, and let's get started and let's create one JSP file. So I will click on new JSP file, and the name could be like import.jsp. Let me click on finish, and here we go. Now in order to import anything in a JSP file, we need to use the page directive. And the way is pretty simple. We simply need to use the page directive. Obviously we will make use of @ symbol, and we will type in page and then import equals, and inside double quotes we will type in the name of the type. Now in here we won't be able to import package. For example, if I type in java.util and save, then there would be an issue. But if I then type in date, then it would be a proper statement. Let me undo the change and let us check what is the error in here. The error is only a type can be imported, and java.util resolves as a package. So we won't be able to import a package, but we would be able to import a type. So let us import the date type in here, and now we can display the date on the web page easily. We can either make use of a scriptlet or an expression. Obviously expression would be rather easier choice, because we won't be required to create a date variable, and we simply need to type in new date. Here we go. And if I execute this web page now, the output would be the current date. Here we go. So this is the output which is in front of us. Now not only we can import a type in here, we can import user defined classes as well. So let me add a class in here, and for doing so, by highlighting Java resource, I will add a new class, and this is class, not a servlet. The name could be, for example, demo, and package could be maybe imports, and there would be, for example, no main method. Let us create the class without a main method. Here we go. So in this particular class we can create a method now. So it would be a public method. The name could be maybe test, and in here we would simply return a text, and the text would be returned from test method. Here we go. Okay, and as we are returning a string, we need to type in a string in here. Everything looks fine, and finally in here we would be importing this particular class. So for doing so, we would again make use of page directive, page import equals. Now obviously we have this imports package, so we will type in imports dot the name of the class. And what is the name of the class? The name of the class is also demo, so it would be demo. Here we go. So now let us call this test method from the class demo, and in order to make things more readable, I have added this br tag in between this particular statement and the statement we are going to type in. And I suppose you guys already have some basic knowledge of HTML, as this is required. So let me type in a JSP expression, and inside this JSP expression, first of all we would require a object of demo class. So I will type in new demo, and without creating an instance, let us call the test method directly. Here we go. Rather taking a shortcut in order to implement things. Here we go. So in here, returned from the test method text on our web page. So this is how we can import our own classes or call our own methods, or we can import any type directly on the JSP page. So I hope I have made myself clear. Explanation was easy and lecture was cleaner and easy to understand. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey friends, welcome back. Friends, today we're gonna check how to forward and redirect request, and For doing so, I have already added this particular project, and let us add couple of JSP to start with. So let me add a JSP file which would be index.jsp, and in the index.jsp we will simply type in welcome. Here we go, and we will add a new file forward.jsp, and here we go. In the forward.jsp we will type in request forwarded, and in this particular index page we would call JSP forward tag, and the way to do so is pretty simple. JSP forward tag, and the syntax is JSP forward page equals the name of the page as a string, and finally closing the JSP forward tag. And now if I provide the parameter as forward.jsp and save the program, what happens is that as soon as we load the welcome page or this index.jsp, the request, whole and sole request, would be forwarded to forward.jsp. Even this welcome text won't be printed on the web page. So let me show you this. Let me execute the program. Here we go. So request forwarded, even though there is a text before this statement, even then the request would be forwarded. So this is known as forwarding. Now what is the special thing about forwarding? If we check the URL doesn't change, only the request gets forwarded. Even if I remove this index.jsp, as index.jsp is our welcome page, even then the request would be forwarded to this file and not the index.jsp file. So this is forwarding. We must also check how to forward the request under Java, or how we can do it under Servlet. This particular syntax we won't be able to use under Servlet. So let us check the generic way of forwarding the request, which is used mostly, as the forwarding of request is most likely to be done under Servlet and not under JSP. So in here quickly I will create a scriptlet, and inside this scriptlet we will make use of something known as request dispatcher. So we would type in request in here. Eclipse is not responding somehow, so I will type in request dot get request dispatcher. The Eclipse is not responding that good, and in this argument we need to pass in the page to which we would be forwarding the request. So in here it would be forward.jsp, and once we reach till now, we can either create an object of request type and use the object for calling the forward method, or we can also call the forward method directly, which I usually preferred. So I will call the forward method, and to the forward method we need to pass in request and response. So we will pass in request, which is the object of request, and response. Here we go, and everything looks good, and the output would be exactly same. There won't be any change in here. So let me execute the program. Here we go. So request has been forwarded. Even if I remove index.jsp, again and the request should be forwarded. So this is the way how we can do it using Java. Now most of the time this way would be used, obviously, because this way can be used in Servlet, and most of the time forwarding and all the business logic part is being implemented in Servlet. So all these operations would be done in Servlet most of the time. Now finally, let me again comment this out, how to redirect the request. Now if we would like to redirect, we need to do it by making use of response object, as we are responding to the request. So it would be like response.send redirect, and inside this particular parameter we can pass the name of the page. So let us now create a new page. In fact, it would be redirected page, new JSP, redirect.jsp. In here I will type in redirected page. This looks good. Alright, coming back to index.jsp. In here we will type in redirect.jsp. And now if I execute the program, the things should work properly. Here we go. So in here redirect.jsp got loaded even though we have executed index.jsp page. And even if I get rid of redirect.jsp page from the URL and hit enter, even then the page would be redirected to the page redirect.jsp. Now what is redirection? Redirection means that your whole request would be redirected to a new URL, whereas when we are doing a forwarding thing, only the information is being captured and the information has been forwarded to the new page, and the response which has been received by the page is been displayed on the web page and the URL doesn't change. So this is all about redirect and forwarding, and this is something important which is highly used when we code scalable architecture by using architecture like MVC or other things. So we will also check how to code with MVC and all other stuff, and these redirecting and forwarding would be helpful then. So I guess the lecture was easy to understand, and hope you guys to see you next time. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey friends, welcome. Today we're gonna discuss on MVC. MVC stands for Model View Controller. It's a design pattern, and this design pattern is widely used in industry, and it is also preferred as this design pattern makes things really easy to develop. Friends, MVC is nothing but one of many ways to develop software or web application. Let us understand and discuss more on MVC. Why MVC? Basically, MVC is used for code usability and separation of concern. Well, code usability is easy to understand. We can reuse the code. Let us understand what is separation of concern. Separation of concern. Now what are these concerns? These concerns are nothing but model, view and controller. What is a view? Whatever is in front of us, which is visually available and visually visible to us, is the view. For example, a web page. A web page which is in front of us is view. Now in order to generate and create a web page, we may require HTML, JSP, maybe CSS or any other language. Now under MVC, view part, the code which is responsible to generate the view for the web page is categorized as view, and all the view related code is separated and is kept somewhere else. Now what is model? Model basically deals with database interaction. If we have a data and we would like to store the data in the database, we will tell the model to store the data in the database and model will do it. Likewise, whenever we require an information from the database, we will ask model to do the same. Now friends, all the database interaction is handled by model, and the code related to database interaction are kept under model. Now model is a concern, and all the model related code are kept separately. Now controller is like a manager for view and model. Controller will manage when and which view to show, and controller will also manage that which data to be fetched or which data to be stored. So the overall business logic is being implemented in the controller. If we talk about JSP and Servlet, a controller would be always a servlet, whereas JSP, HTML, XML, CSS, these files would be used under view, whereas a servlet or a Java class could be used as a model for database interaction. So let's understand MVC with respect to this form. If we talk about this form, this particular form which is in front of us, it is nothing but form. Obviously we have made use of HTML, and maybe JSP in order to generate this form, and all the view part is view. This is as simple as that. And if we talk about this particular form, there could be some processing required. For example, if we submit a form with an invalid date format, some processing needs to be required in order to tell the user that the date format is not proper, and that processing needs to be done by a mechanism which is nothing but the controller. So all the business logic which is implemented in the MVC pattern would be handled by the controller. So in this form, whenever we will submit, if there is any calculation or any business logic needs to be implemented, controller will implement that. Finally, whenever we will submit this form needs to be stored somewhere, and this storage would be done by the model. So this is the whole and sole overview of MVC. Even for calling the model, even for that case, controller would be responsible. Controller will call the model for storing all this information. So we have checked what is MVC by making use of this presentation, and in order to understand this more, we have created this very simple web application, and the working of this web application we will check in the next lecture for sure. But in this particular web application, there are a couple of JSP files, and which JSP file needs to be loaded depending on the URL would be handled by a controller. So we would be creating a controller which will handle which file to be loaded depending on the condition, and this would be a very simple MVC web application in fact. And in this particular web application, we will surely not check database interaction, we will check it down the line, and in fact we will make things simple, and we will develop this very simple web application using MVC pattern, and later down the line we will definitely check more complex projects in fact. So this is all about today's lecture, and we will check the MVC in detail in the next lecture using a program. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Hey friends, welcome back. Friends, today we're gonna check the concept known as MVC model, and this MVC model is hugely used in industry, and let us check how we can build JSP web applications using this model, and things will become very handy once we start using this model. In order to save some time, I have already added this project MVC model, and let us add one servlet. The name of the servlet would be controller, and the servlet would be on the default package. We won't use a package for it, and the name would be controller. Let us click on finish. And in fact, the reason why I have used the default package, the reason is to make the URL simpler. So there is nothing wrong in using a package for controller. It is absolutely okay and recommended also. But to start with, let us use the default package only. Now friends, this controller will control the view part and the model part in concept. So in order to getting started with view, let us create some JSP files, and once all these JSP parts created, we will talk more on MVC. So let us create couple of JSPs. The name could be first of all index.jsp, index, hit enter. The extension would be added by the Eclipse automatically. New JSP, maybe about JSP, and couple of more JSPs like login, maybe one more as sign up, and finally we will add not found.jsp. Here we go. So let us start. Under this not found.jsp, we will type in something went wrong. For login.jsp, please login. About would be like we are steady easy, and in this particular index.jsp, which would be the welcome page, there would be couple of links. These links will head these locations. So now let us add couple of links. These links would pointing to these files. Obviously these links would be placed under this index.jsp because this is the welcome page. And how it is the welcome page? It is being listed as a welcome page on the deployment descriptor. So this is altogether a different story. Let us first execute the controller.java in order to get the URL properly. So when we execute this controller.java, the doGet method will get executed, this doGet method, and where we go in here, this particular is the URL. Now friends, this localhost colon 8080 is the base URL, so we need not to worry about this base URL because the base URL will change. We will simply copy this particular part. Alright, and let me copy this. Here we go. So we will type in ahref equals the link. Now friends, this link would be slash the name of the project, which is this, then controller, then question mark, maybe page equals login. Login would be good, and in here we will type in login. Likewise we will do the same with about and sign up. The not found.jsp would be used somewhere else. So let me copy this from here and paste it twice, and we will change it to about, and this would be sign up. In fact, the sequence is not good enough. I will cut this particular line and paste it in here. Obviously we will also add some BR tags in order to make things better. I guess everything looks good. Now finally let us execute this particular page once and check how it looks. Now friends, to check the URL, if I hit enter, it would be like MVC model slash controller colon page equals to login. Then if I click on, let me close these, let me again execute it. Then if I sign up, then the page would be sign up. Let us navigate back. If I click on about, then the page would be about. So links are working properly. Now we need to do something in this controller. Let's code the servlet now, and we need to code this doGet method. To start with, we would require one variable, and that variable would be string. The name could be like page equals, to start with we will keep it as null. Secondly, we would require one more string variable. The string variable would be param of the URL. So to start with, we will initialize this param with the value received from the URL, and the way to do so is request, I suppose it is request dot get parameter. Here we go, and the parameter is page. Now this page needs to be inside double quotes. So now in this param variable we will get the parameter page. So whatever the value of page would be inside this param. Now let us initialize the variable page depending on the parameter. So in here we will type in f param dot equals. Why dot equals? Because param is a string entity, and in order to compare a string, dot equals method is the best. And in here we would type in login. So if the value of param is login, then we will make the value of page equals, it would be slash login. So slash is mandate because if there is no slash there would be an error. I will also show you that. Now next thing would be else if param dot equals, this time it would be like sign up. Again it would be inside double quotes. Then we will type in page equals slash sign up. Here we go, and it would be, in fact, this slash, I have made this mistake in here. it would be /sign up and semicolon. So now in here we will type in page equal, under double quotes it would be sign up. Here we go. And again there would be again one else if param dot equals about, and in about we will definitely initialize the variable page as about. Everything seems okay. And finally there would be one more else which will cover all the remaining cases, and this time we will initialize page with not found.jsp. so it would be like not found. Well, I have made this silly mistake. There would be like JSP. In here we need to type in JSP. So let me quickly do the change in here, JSP, and in here again JSP. So everything looks fine to me. Finally in here we will pass the request to these files. Now friends, we have already checked how to pass the request, but in here we will be passing the request as a response, part of a response to the particular request. So for doing so, the syntax is a little different. We need to make use of get servlet context method. So we will type in get servlet context dot get request dispatcher, and to this request dispatcher we will definitely add page which will contain either of these values, either signup.jsp, about.jsp, not found.jsp or login.jsp, depending on the condition. And finally let us forward the request by making use of forward method, request and response object by passing the argument. I guess everything is looking good. Let me execute the program. In fact, I would have executed the program by highlighting the index.jsp. I guess there could be some kind of like error. Yes, let me get rid of this first. Here we go. And if I click on login, then it will tell me please login. If I click on sign up, there is a issue on sign up. Let me check what is the issue. Before executing, let me check things. Here is a small mistake, and we have forgot to add in this slash. Apart from that, the sign up.jsp, the S was capital case, so I have fixed the issue. Let me now finally execute the program by highlighting the index.jsp. Here we go. So now if I click on login, then it will say please login, and if I click on sign up, it will say please sign up, and if we say about, then it will say we are study easy, which is perfect. So this is something like model view controller mechanism, and if I directly execute controller, then there would be definitely an error because we haven't handled the case where we don't have this request page. So that is a small thing which we can definitely handle by making use of some condition. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Hey fellas, welcome. Friends, I welcome you all in this new section on HTML forms, and in this particular section we will check how to deal with forms under JSP. So let's get started and let's check HTML forms. As an overview, we're gonna check couple of things, and the things which we're gonna check in this particular lecture are what is form and why it is important in fact. Apart from that, we will also check a small fragment of code and the output of the code, and that will make us understand that how to build a very basic form in fact. Apart from that, we will also check how forms interact with the web server, and finally we will also check the communication methods of form. Now if we talk about forms in web, forms are everywhere. For example, if we check this particular web page, This is a snap of a Google sign up form web page, and this particular form is nothing but a web page with a form. Whenever we would like to interact with the user, form is the answer. For example, if we go ahead and check the Facebook homepage, again it is a web page with a form. Moving forward, if we check Udemy's homepage, even in here we have this very simple form. Whenever it comes to interaction, form is the answer. In here we can search for courses which are available in this particular website Udemy, and in here we can type in the query and Udemy will search the appropriate courses for you. So again, this is a form. Now this is a little complex form when compared to Udemy's homepage. In here we can search for hotels. This is a snapshot of one of the travel websites. I guess it's Make My Trip, and in here we can surely check hotels worldwide. So this is again a form where we have multiple fields. Finally, let us check a very simple form which we have built, and we will also check the code for it. So here is the simple form which we have built, where we have full name, gender, known languages, country, and a submit button. And here is a simple code of HTML. This particular form we would be using in our forthcoming lectures, and in fact this particular form has couple of elements. For example, there is input type text, then we have radio buttons, then we also have checkboxes, and we also have drop down. So we have couple of basic elements in here, and even though this is a very basic and simple form, even then there are couple of things which we would be discussing in forthcoming lecture, even though it is a very simple form altogether. Now let us move forward and let us check how form interact with the web server. Now interaction with the web server is pretty simple, as we know that there are request and response objects which are already available to us, and in fact the web application follow this rule. It will request the web application and it will receive the response from the web application. So even form follow the same topology. It will request the particular resources depending on the user input, and depending on the user input the web application will process the form and give the response. Whenever it comes with user interaction, then form would be the answer. So this is a very simple topology of request response model. Moving forward, finally let us check communication methods. Now there are two communication methods, post and get. Now where to define the communication method, how to define it, and how to handle it, this is something which we gonna check in the forthcoming lecture. As if now to understand that post is the encrypted form. In the case of post, the user cannot check that which information is submitted by the form. It is in the encrypted form, and which is recommended in fact. The next method is get method, where the information is passed via the URL. Definitely we will check these two methods in detail in the forthcoming lecture. So I suppose the lecture was easy to understand, and this is all about today's lecture. This was a very simple overview. I guess the lecture was easy to understand and you guys have enjoyed it. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Hey fellas, welcome back. Friends, we have checked the form overview and we have checked it in the last lecture. And in here we have this very simple form in which we have made use of couple of form elements. Friends, if you guys would like to know more about these HTML elements, then I suggest you guys to go ahead and Google. There are plenty of tutorials available on HTML which are obviously free of cost, and learn more about these HTML elements. We will definitely use couple of HTML elements which are widely used in fact. So these are couple of widely used HTML elements. We won't be making use of this particular form. We will make use of a similar form which we will code from the scratch to make things understandable. So let us create a new HTML file and it would be sample form2.html. So let's get started. We will give the title of the web page as sample form, and inside the body we will have the form. Here we go. And the action would be submit.jsp. So we would be submitting this particular form to submit.jsp. Let us define the method. So in method we can define either get or post. So to start with, let us take it as get, and we would be able to see the form submission on the URL. The information would be visible to us. In here, first input field was full name, so it would be input type equals text. The name would be name, and friends, this name attribute is really important because this is the identifier of the field when we submit the form. So this is important, and I always follow the camel case. This would be a self-contained tag, input tag. Then we have gender, so it would be like gender, and it would be a radio button, so it would be like input type equals. Now the type of the radio button is radio, and the name would be gender, and it would be inside double quotes, and we need to also give the value, and this value is important. And why it is important? Because when we would be submitting this particular form, the value of this value field would be the key factor of reading this radio button. The importance of the value would be understood by us by the end of this lecture. The value would be male, and we will end this tag. Now friends, in here we also can do this thing. Normally this is optional but recommended. We can mark this particular field as label. Now why this is important? This is important for SEO. This has a effect on search engine optimization. Well, in this particular tutorial we won't be worried about these labels or anything else. This is just an informative thing. Let us get rid of the label, and let me copy this line and paste it once again in here. The value will change to female, and it would be again female. And if we would like to make any of this radio button checked by default, then we can mark this as check. So let us code for known languages known, and it would be input type equals checkbox, and name would be language. And again in here value is important. Value would be English. Let me copy this and paste it couple of times. Then we have this drop down in here, and let us code for it. Then for drop down of country we would require the select tag, and inside select we would have options. These options will build the drop down list. Again, for these options value is important because value will tell us that what value was selected. So first would be India, then we will type in the label and then option. And let me pause this video and add the rest of the options. So we have built the drop down list as well, and finally we would require a submit button. So it would be input type equals submit, and value is again important in here because value would be the label of the button. And finally we need to add couple of BR tags in order to make things more readable. I suppose everything looks fine. Let us execute the program. Here we go. So the form is exactly the same as we have expected. Now let us code submit.jsp real quick, and for doing so we will create a submit.jsp file under web content folder. Here we go, and under this particular submit.jsp we will simply displaying the value. So we will type in full name colon, and we will obviously make use of JSP expression request dot get parameter, And what is the parameter? The parameter is the name. So in here we will type in name, all smaller case. Second element is gender. So what gender the user has selected? Again, we would be making use of JSP expression request dot get parameter, and in here gender. Likewise, we will add more fields. So here we go, everything is being read, and let us quickly add br tags in between. And now let us execute this particular form. Name is Chand and gender is male. I know English and Hindi, and country India. Let us make it as English only, and let me submit this particular form. Here we go. So the output is full name Chand, gender male, language known English, and country India, which is perfect. So this is very easy, and let me show you a couple of more things. In here, if I skip this particular value and re-execute the form, there won't be any effect on the form. But if I submit this form and select English and then click on submit button, then there would be some issue, right? So this will simply show me on, but on for which particular language? There won't be any language. So this is the reason why this value in here is important. So let me undo the change. Likewise, it is important to have this value field for radio button, for drop down. In fact, there are couple of more elements in HTML, and I urge you guys to check these elements and try to check the tutorials related to it for more information. And one more small little thing. For example, we have this particular form and we check mark multiple languages, for example, then only the first language which is checked would be on our output page. And the reason is because the handling of these kind of situation is little different, and we will also check how to handle these kind of situation in upcoming videos. In fact, we would have a couple of projects in this particular course, and we will definitely check on that. And let us quickly also check what happens if we make this as post. If we make this method as post and then execute the program and submit the form, then the only difference which we will find is that the URL for the JSP page would be super simple. Let me submit the page in here. So in here there is nothing in the URL. Now the data has been transferred as an encrypted form, and the information is hidden from the world. And the post method is recommended when we doesn't want to show the information to the world. And this is all for this lecture. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. In order to save some time, I have already added this project in our Eclipse IDE by the name of forms, and there is no servlet or JSP added in here. Let us firstly add a servlet in order to getting started. So let me add a servlet. The Java package, we will keep it as blank in order to simplify the URL, and the class name would be controller. Let me click on finish, and a template of a servlet would be generated for us. And if we execute the servlet, then it will give us a very simple message because of this line, and the message would be server at and the name of the project, right? Now friends, this in here which is highlighted, this after the base URL, this part is the URL, and this particular part which is localhost colon 8080 is the base URL. So whenever we deal with form, we don't use this base URL because this localhost colon 8080 will change when we deploy the project on the internet, and in place of this localhost our website name will come. So let me copy this for a minute because we will need it. Let me use shift and arrow key in order to select. That would be good. Let me copy this part, and now let me add a JSP file in here. New JSP. The name could be like login, and let me click on finish. Here we go. Let us now add a form. So we will type in form, and the action would be the URL, this particular URL which we have copied. Let me highlight it, this part. So let me copy it, which I already did in fact, and paste it in here. And this would be the action, means whenever we will submit this form, the form will be submitted to this controller. So now let me get back to the form, and inside the form there would be like two input. First input would be maybe email, type equals text, and in here name parameter is very important because name is the identifier of the field. So name would be email, and always by convention people use the name in a smaller case, which I also follow. So keep it as a smaller case, and in here we will make use of password, and in here the input would be same as the above. Input type equals text, and again name equals password. I guess something okay. Tag has been closed in here. Name equals password. Here we go, and self-contained tag closed. Here we go, and finally we would like a submit button. So it would be again input tag, but the type would be submit. Type equals submit. In fact, the type of password would be not text, it would be password. Here we go, and in this input where the type is submit, in here we need to give a value. Value would be the text on the button. So value would be like login. I guess everything looks good now. Let me execute the program. Here we go. Now what would be the method of this form submission is not specified in this file, so let me also specify that. Later on we will also check what happens if we doesn't declare a method. So the method would be equals get to start with. So this is a very simple form, and let me execute the program once again. Email would be my email, chandsheikh@gmail.com, and password would be maybe 123456. And as we have taken the type as password, password would be encrypted and the user won't be able to see that. Now when I log in here, check the URL, as the method was get. As a result, the information is being passed to this controller as a parameter of the URL itself. Hence this URL is email equals chandsheikh@gmail.com, which is the first param, then ampersand, then password equal to 123456, which is the second parameter. And now we can definitely use this information in this doGet method and then process it accordingly. Now friends, in here also check that we are making use of doGet method. Why? Because the method of the form is doGet. So we would be able to read the information which is in the form of get inside this doGet method, whereas if the information is of method post, which we will check in a minute, then we will code inside the doPost method. Now inside this doGet method, let us read the information which is submitted by the user from the form. So we will type in a string, maybe email equals, obviously we will do request dot get parameter. So this parameter will read the information definitely from the form, and we need to pass the argument. Now this argument is the name which we define in here, email, and this is case sensitive and this needs to be accurate. Then only we would be able to read the information. So in here, inside this string email, we will store the email address of the user. Let us do the same with password. I will simply copy this from here and paste it in here, and in place of email we will require password, and in place of string email we will change the name to password again. So now we can read email and password, and to make things very simple, we will simply print some message if the email is my email and password is 123456. So we will type in if email dot equals Chanshek at gmail.com. This keyboard is not good at all, and there would be again one condition. We will type in and password. In here we will type in and password dot equals 123456. Here we go. And if these two information is correct, then we will display a message, and for that we needs to create one object. So we will type in print writer out equals response dot get writer, and in here we will use out dot print ln. On the web page we will type in welcome. Things looks good. Yes, we will type in else, and inside the braces we will display yet another message, and the message would be login failed. I guess everything is good enough, and let me execute the program by restarting the server. Okay, there is an error, and the error is but obvious because we need to execute the login page. Here we go, and the email is my email, password is 123456. Let's click on login. It will say welcome. If I do something else, maybe some test at test.com, password may be anything, and click on login, then it will display login fail. So our application is working perfectly. Last but not the least, if we make this as post, then how we need to handle the program. Let us check that. Now when we make the method as post, the URL will remain the same. Means now URL will not show the information directly, and obviously which is better, because we won't like to show the password to the world in the form of information at the URL. The information needs to go in an encrypted and a hidden form, and for that matter of purpose, if we make the method as post, so the form will be submitted as a post entity. Now if the form is being submitted to the controller as post, then we need to read it in the do post method. So let us do that, and for doing so, let us get rid of this first of all. And if we don't have any code in this do post method, then let us check what happens. Let me execute the program by restarting the server, and it will take a minute. Here we go, and I will type in some random text in here. No need to have a appropriate or accurate information. Here we go. So now the output is blank because there is nothing in this do post method. Now how to handle the situation? The syntax is exactly same. Now if I simply cut this code from here and paste it in here, our work would be done. Let me close this web page now, and let me again execute the program by restarting the server. Here we go, and now again some random text, and when I will click on finish, login failed, which is perfect. And mark this thing that when we click on login, the URL doesn't show any information. So let me type in chanshek at gmail.com and password as 123456 and click on login. Then it will say welcome, but this time there is nothing in the URL. So this is known as post method, and this is a very simple overview. In the upcoming lecture we will see the basics of validation, how we can validate these information quickly. And I guess the lecture was easy to understand and you guys enjoyed the lecture. Hope to see you guys next time. Thank you for taking this course and have a nice day. Hey guys, today we will continue our journey and we will check very basic validation that could be implemented in our previous program, and this implementation of validation would be done by either HTML5 or we can also make use of JavaScript, and the purpose is to show you guys that how easily we can implement things in JSP page, and it is absolutely similar to HTML page, and we can implement JavaScript code and we can also use HTML5 element if the web browser is supported. So let us get started and check these things out. In order to getting started, let us change the view of this program a little bit by adding couple of breaks. Then it should look better. Here we go. First and foremost thing is that these two fields, which are email and password, are required fields. If the user doesn't enter anything in these fields and try to hit enter, let me refresh the page. Here we go. And if the user directly click on login without entering either email or password, even then the form will submit. So these two fields are required. And the easiest way to make fields required under HTML5. Now friends, whenever we make use of HTML5, the web browser needs to support HTML5 in order to get things working. So in here we can type in required and our work would be done. There is some kind of weird warning in here which should not be displayed. In fact, here we go. So now if I click on login, then the web browser will give us a warning. This is a required field. Now one validation we are able to handle. The validation is that now email address and password both are required fields. Now friends, if I execute the program again and for example I type in test and password maybe any password and click on login, then also the form will submit even though we are asking email for it. So in order to validate a proper email, the quickest way, it is again provided by HTML5 in a very simple and easiest manner. We can type as email, and if we do so and execute the program and then for example we type in test and some weird password and click on login, then it will say you must enter a valid email address. So these are couple of very important controls provided by HTML5, and things becomes very easy when we use HTML5. Likewise, for example, if we want to restrict that the minimum size of the password must be for example 8 and the maximum size could be for example 10, then even that could be implemented. Now friends, when it comes to min size and max size, we can tell HTML5 that the max size is 8 or maybe the max size is 10 and don't allow user to enter any more character after the 10 character, but there is no such control for min character. So let me show you how to implement the max character. For doing so, we will use max length property and we will pass the length. The length could be like 10 characters, and now if I execute the program, then we won't be able to enter password more than 10 characters. So maybe abc@abc.com, any dummy email, and the password would be 123456789 and after 0. Now I'm trying to type and add more character, but the web browser is not allowing me to add more characters. So this is how we can implement a restriction on max character. Now this is all about adding controls of HTML5. Now we will also check how we can add a script, or in other words a JavaScript, in this particular form. I hope I was clear and the lecture was easy to understand. Hoping to see you guys soon. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Let us check how we can implement a script in this JSP page. In order to implement a JavaScript, first of all we need to make some certain and obviously small changes in here. Let's give the name to this form first. So we will pass a name parameter, name equals maybe sample, and there is one more parameter which would be required as on submit, and inside on submit we will pass return and the name of the method. The name of the method could be like validate. Now friends, return means that this validate method will return a specific value. The value could be true or false. If we receive a false value, then the form will not submit. Apart from that, in order to give you a very short and simple overview, we will simply stick to JavaScript, but there is no restriction in implementing any other scripting language, or for example language like jQuery or anything else. So that's perfectly fine. Now friends, whenever we talk about scripts, majorly the scripts are implemented inside the head tag, or we include the script file in the head tag. In here, let us add a script tag in here, and obviously we need to close the script, else nothing will work then. Here we go. And inside the script we will type in the method name. Inside the script tag we can code our function. In JavaScript we call methods as function. Method and function are both same. So in here we will type in function. The syntax is again pretty easy. The name of the function, which is sample, and pair of parentheses, and inside braces we can surely write our code. For variable we make use of var keyword. The variable name could be like length or len to be very specific, and we will receive the length of the password in this variable and validate whether the length is greater than 8 or not. So in here we will type in document. Document is the document object. The whole web page is a document object. So firstly we need to use the document object, then forms as object for all the forms in the web page. So it would be forms, and inside this form we need to pass the parameter as the name of the form. The name of the form is sample, and the name of the method is in fact validate. I made this silly mistake in here, so it's validate. And then we need to pass the name of the field. The name of the field is obviously password, which we are taking into consideration. And finally we need to extract the length property of this particular field. So we will type in length, and the length of this field would be stored inside this length variable. Then finally obviously the semicolon, which is the statement terminator. And now as soon as we receive the length in this length variable, we can do absolutely any operations in here. So we can type in if length is less than 8, then we can like alert like password length is less than 8 character, and finally we will return false. I guess everything looks good, and let us finally execute the program. Some issue with Apache Tomcat. Hey guys, now the program is executing perfectly. We simply removed the Tomcat server and re-added the Tomcat server, and now the code is executing. But there is two slight modification we did. In here we have changed the path of action, and the reason is previously the action was pointing to the previous servlet from the previous project. So we have fixed that issue. Apart from that, in here we won't be able to use .length property directly, because length is a property of value. So we need to pass in like this: document.forms, name of the forms, then name of the field, .value, .length, then the things will work. We have also added this else part, which is not required. In fact, even we remove this, it should work. So let's get started and execute the program upfront. Here we can add one like abc at abc.com, any sample email address, and password would be 123456, which is less than 8 character. And if I log in now, then there would be an alert message, password length is less than 8 character. And if I click on OK, the form will not submit, and form will not submit because we are returning false if the length is less than 8. So this is the trick. Finally, let us change this condition to length less than 6, as the condition in the controller is if email equals chanshake@gmail.com, which is my email address, and password is 123456, then we will print welcome. So let us now enter a perfect input, and let's check that whether we get the welcome message or not. So I will type in chanshake@gmail.com and password 123456, and it should give us a proper message and form should submit. And here we go. So everything looks perfectly all right, and this is how we can add JavaScript code, or in fact any script code, in our JSP page which is supported by the browser. And apart from that, this is how HTML5 components could be also added, which is pretty easy. Going forward, we will now check something known as beans concept under JSP, which is a good practice to use. I hope I was clear and the lecture was easy to understand. Hoping to see you guys soon. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.